Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-1 Addendum. We are picking back up after our successful first orbit contract, and we're starting off with Bob Kerman here, yet again at the flight stick of an X405, trying to complete a hold speed at altitude contract for a little bit of Kerbucks. I think we need to sit right around 13 kilometers and sit between 445 and 645 meters per second. Unfortunately, we forgot to reinstall the drop tanks on this flight. So we're going to ride the very bottom end of the speed and the very top end of the altitude and hope that the combination of two will give us enough endurance to sit at this speed for the required 3 minutes that we need to satisfy the contract. These are nice and calming things to try to do when your aircraft is capable of them, and typically we added those drop tanks because we were having problems maintaining speed and altitude for a full 3 minutes, but Bob, being the expert pilot that he is, wipes it off the board with absolutely no problem whatsoever. 800 meters per second left in the tank when he goes ahead and pulls this Immelman turn to start heading back to the KSC. No ignitions left on the engine, however, so he's going to have to glide slope it all the way home. We did a little bit of fuel balancing to try to preserve our center of mass, center of lift ratio, just to really help improve our odds of being able to coast this thing all the way back to the runway. But thankfully, and lucky for Bob being such a good pilot, and this thing just glides like a champion. So we're actually coming in a little too high and a little too hot. So as we make our final runway approach here, we're going to start performing some S-turns to bleed off some of this speed. Yeah. Expert piloting here, Bob. We actually bleed off just a little too much in these last two turns, but we do have some altitude we need to shut off, so we'll just drop down, get the gear out, and then come onto the runway at just a hair above stall speed. Nice gentle touchdown, drag chute deploys, another contract in the books. So moving along, this is our Narwhal orbital launch vehicle, or the NOLV 1A, that completed our first successful Earth orbit, and we were really hoping to try to modify it a little bit in the days leading up to our next big tech unlock of orbital engines and integral tanks to see if maybe we couldn't just push that extra little bit of delta V required to make this able to hit a polar orbit. So we strapped on some Nike SRBs from the Nike sounding rocket to the side to try to give it that extra little oomph off the pad to see if we couldn't make up some of the difference. It will not, however, make up for the terrible piloting that I am obviously guilty of. So this is our first simulated attempt to see if maybe this machine is actually capable of hitting a polar orbit. First attempt was definitely a no-go, but I will say that that flight profile was less than ideal. This profile, slightly better, but only just, trying to dial in how much below horizon we want to aim before we fire off our B stages, and how much of that RCS fuel we can bleed off in the time leading up to it. And this is really our best attempt out of all of them. 1.56 million by 123, still not an orbit. So while it was good, it was not quite good enough, and I don't really know if we can really push the flight profile of this vehicle to such a way that we can actually make a polar orbit achievable. So we did run a few more sims trying to just see how hard we could push it, but every subsequent attempt was actually worse than that second one. We even doubled up on the SRBs, thinking, well, maybe that will make the extra difference, as well as doing some optimization, dialing down the RCS fuel, removing a few little bits of battery, and trying to see how much weight savings we could dial out of this thing. But we went ahead and added it to the VAB build list, just to try to kind of take our shot at in the meantime and see how bad we can fail it. But while we were goofing around with some other contracts, we did unlock our orbital vehicles, or our orbital engines node, as well as integral tanks. So we're going to start trying to plot out an actual orbital launch vehicle. So I've paid the money and unlocked the AJ-10, which admittedly, to start, is a terrible engine. I mean, it's a really good engine when it works, but it very often just doesn't. So, but it does get a whole lot better as you progress through the game. The AJ10 Advanced is actually one of the best later stage engines available at all. I use it a lot in my RP0 series, and I rely on it quite heavily. So we're going to start trying to get some research points built into that AJ10, so maybe we can get some kind of reliability out of it and hope that it doesn't absolutely sink and destroy our entire space program. So as for a booster engine, we're kind of debating, but we ended up going with the LR79 as a booster engine. It's got a 3-minute runtime, which is going to be very helpful, but unfortunately it looks like our upper stage is pretty heavy. This rocket is going to require some severe optimization if it's ever going to be orbital class. Right now it's basically carrying about 10 kilograms of payload and still very much lacks the delta V necessary to hit a sustainable orbit. Now, optimizations we can do right off the bat is at second stage with the AJ10 is not using the greatest utilization. I think it's down to like 77% to get down to the runtime. We can't shrink the length of the stage any further. We're actually going to have to go down in diameter from 2 meters to probably about 1.5 meters so that we can get good utilization there. We can probably optimize for space for the RCS better, as well as kind of playing with the avionics to see if we can't get some mass savings there. And well, of course, if neither of those works, we always have the option of using some strap-on boosters, either SRBs, which we will have unlocked soon, or maybe even diving back to our A6 A6 engines, or the Redstone engine that we were using on our Narwhal rocket previously. So these are all options that I will definitely be exploring as we try to round out the details of using these two engines in any way possible, or any configuration whatsoever, to give us, my goal honestly would be about a 1-ton deliverable. That would be top end. If we can get a 0.5-ton deliverable payload package to orbit, I will be pretty dang happy. But that's going to do it for this one, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it, and I will see all of you in the next one. So until then, see you later.